The fans are out, and this week pads will be popping. Let's catch up on everything going on at Minnesota Vikings Training Camp on the Locked On Vikings podcast.
You are Locked On Vikings, your daily Minnesota Vikings podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's going on, everybody? Welcome to another episode of the Locked On Vikings podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. As always, I am your host, your pal, and the kid you copied off in math class. My name is Luke Braun. You can find me on Twitter at Luke Braun NFL. Show is on Twitter at Locked On Vikings. Thank you so much for making Locked On Vikings your first listen of the day, each and every day. Today's episode is brought to you by BetOnline. BetOnline has you covered this season with more props, odds, and lines than ever before. BetOnline, where the game starts. Today on the show, we have a lot of camp catching up to do, but I want to spend most of the show talking about what I think is the most important thing we have seen out of camp, which is a whole bunch of Kevin O'Connell's offense. So let's learn Kevin O'Connell's offense today. There's some other odds and ends, and I'll get you some updates on like what defensive backs are doing better than who, and what's going on with the backup quarterback position and all that. We'll talk about all that at the end. But right now, I want to focus mostly because I want to nerd out about scheme. So this is going to be a real X's and O's kind of episode, and there will be some visual aids on the screen if you're watching on YouTube. If you're just a listener, if you're in your car or whatever, I'll be descriptive. But I do recommend YouTube if it's convenient enough for you to do that. So one of the stories of camp has been the Vikings' futile effort to keep offensive secrets under wrap as training camp ramps up. They already sort of failed a little bit to do this in OTAs, mostly because it's completely impossible. People are going to report on stuff. You split Dalvin Cook out wide. People are going to notice that. And, you do a lot of bunch formations. Like, people are going to be reporting these things. We have a more plugged in and more football savvy fan base and media than ever before. That kind of stuff is just going to happen. But in an effort to maybe curb it, the Vikings had a big sign out over training camp that said, please don't take video of practice. It helps our opponents. So obviously this didn't happen, and a whole bunch of videos circulated around Twitter. And honestly, I say thank you to those people, mostly because I couldn't make it. I'll be there next week, but I couldn't make it yet, so I'm glad I got to see stuff. And what's nice is that when that stuff circulates around Twitter, there are people on Twitter who know what the hell they're looking at and can actually compare it to Mcvay concepts that they recognize. So what we learned about O'Connell's offense was stuff we pretty much already could have guessed, and all of the Vikings opponents absolutely already knew that he was going to run Mcvay stuff. If you weren't preparing for Mcvay stuff to prepare for games against the Vikings, we're hopeless. So if you needed help to do that, then you're never going to make it. But they're using a bunch of Mcvay concepts. So what I want to do today is go over a couple of those Mcvay concepts in excruciating detail, and hopefully we can get a more natural understanding, not only of what the concepts are, but how they are designed to attack defenses. I really want you to understand the why here, right? That's the turn of phrase I'm going to borrow from both Kwesi and Kevin O'Connell, and they're clearly saying it all over that building. Well, let's take a page out of that book then and understand the why of these concepts and how they're designed to get the ball downfield. So the first one I want to start with is called Bo. And it's a very big Mcvay staple, and there's clips of the Vikings running it in training camp already. It's probably going to be a staple concept that you see all the time for the Vikings. This is going to be one of those things, if you're sitting on the couch watching a Vikings game with your friends or family or both, and you'd be like, oh, that was a Bo concept, and then explain how it works, you're going to be the coolest dude at the party, or maybe the most annoying one, depending on how you sell it. But either way, you should know Bo. Bo is a high-low stretch on the hook curl defender. If you understood all of those words, you understand Bo. You understand the basic grasp of Bo, and you can tune out for the next 3 or 4 minutes. But if you don't understand all those words, let me catch you up. Is a concept that is usually designed to attack zone defenses, or zone match defenses as they are today, where you put two guys in the same guy's zone. One is high, one is deep, one is low, one is shallow. Now, there's not a true spot drop zone. The way zone used to work back in the old days was you would be told a landmark. You'd say, okay, you're going to drop 10 yards back and you're going to plant your ankle on the hash mark. And then you have everything from 5 yards behind you to 5 yards in front of you, and from the numbers to the hash. And like that was your zone, right? You'd have these landmarks that would tell you, you drop here and then you guard this area. And now zone match is a little bit more, a little bit less you drop here and a little bit more you match the release of somebody in front of you, but you still are responsible for that area, but you're using man-to-man techniques to guard whoever comes in rather than looking at an area and watching the guy's eyes. I digress. Either way, those defenses will have landmarks that kind of say, you have from here to there. And if you put one person here and one person there, they will have to choose between those two guys. And whoever they don't choose, you throw to. Easy enough, right? So bow is a specific way to do this, a high-low on the hook curl defender. That is usually a linebacker. It is an inside shallow zone. That's all you need to know about it for now. It would be one of the yellow ones on the inside in Madden, if that helps you. So it would be something like a hook in the front. That would be the short route, like a 5-yard little turnaround thing. You can have anybody run that. And then a dig behind it, or it's often called a basic, but I'll call it a dig, which is just an intermediate in-breaking route on a 90-degree angle, really easy. Now, the key to bow is that you usually have the receivers line up in a tight formation with each other, like a 2x2 stack or a bunch or something like that. And they should be right next to each other when they start. And the reason for that is you're trying to attack the same guy's zone. If you start them out very far apart from each other, you invite another defender in. You're going to go through someone else's zone, and now they can apply another defender to this. You want it to be so that there are two guys in one person's zone, so they got to start right on top of each other, and then one just goes deeper than the other. Now, there's a bunch of variations on this, and this is what you get. Like a page of a playbook will be like 8 different versions of bow. One will be just a curl. One will be a curl, but then it breaks outside. One will be a curl, but it can break outside depending on the cornerback's leverage and all that stuff. And it's a zone beater. It can be a man beater if you start adding options and layering stuff onto it, which Mcvay does a lot of, and I think the Vikings will try to as well. That's a big learning curve, though, because the quarterbacks and wide receivers need to be on the exact same page about that stuff. But that's like, if the cornerback is inside, you can break it outside, and if they're in whatever leverage, you can break away from their leverage to try to create separation, that kind of thing. But what you need to know is usually that it starts with a hook and a dig that like wraps around it. So if the linebacker, if that hook curl defender comes up and plays the hook, there should be room behind it for a window to hit that dig, and then that can be an explosive play. Or if they back off and they try to take away the explosive play, you should have a free 5 yards right in front of you. A lot of Mcvay plays will staple bow to a concept called flag. And when I say staple, I just mean you're running one on one side and one on the other. So your concept is called flag bow, and you just staple them right together. Flag is a lot like sail, which you maybe have heard me talk about before. I also believe that's what it's called in Madden. Again, I might use Madden terms here because they can help. But it's a very simple thing. It just means a low receiver and a high receiver on the sideline, and usually there's only one guy over there against like cover 3 or something like that, where somebody will be unguarded. So it's a lot like that, where you will have a corner route that attacks the sideline deep, and then you have like a check down. And what's cool about that is it can basically be the hot read. So while that bow stuff is going on the other side, let's say they blitz or somebody gets rocked on the offensive line, the quarterback has said, okay, if somebody comes, you're hot. You got to throw hot. That means you're responsible for an unblocked defender. And to be responsible for him, that means you get rid of the ball before he gets there. And that check down, the low part of the flag concept is the guy you're trying to go to. So that he is told, it'll usually be the running back, and he's told, hey, keep an eye out. The ball might come to you if the quarterback's hot. And then what you do is you go all the way out to the sideline, and then you burst back in. So it looks like you're a check down, and a lot of times a flat defender will let his guard down out there, and you burst back in out of that flat defender's zone. And usually by then, whoever would be there to pick you up, it's later in the play, is gone doing something else. So essentially, if there's pressure, you throw it hot. If there's not, then he has time for it to develop. And there's also a pretty nice little corner route in there as well. So that's flag bow. That is one of the plays. There you go. And it's everywhere. It's the big, huge thing in Mcvay offenses. Mcvay offenses love bow, and I think the Vikings are going to love bow as well, and they're going to staple flag to it a lot. There's another one that I want to talk to you about, but first, let me talk to you about a good old Gramble. The season is coming, so get your Grambles in. If you want to bet on the Vikings over under win total, you want to bet on where they're going to be in the division and all that stuff, you could bet on MVP odds. You can bet on over unders for like Justin Jefferson yards or touchdowns or something like that. All of that is at betonline.net. You can bet on other sports too. Baseball's getting close to its playoffs. WNBA is going strong. You can bet on golf or tennis or whatever the latest two TikTokers that are fighting. You can bet on that. Adrian Peterson versus Le'Veon Bell. That's happening, right? You can bet on that. You can bet on all that stuff at betonline.net, where the game starts. Hey, thank you so much for making Locked On Vikings for your first listen of the day. What I would love for you to do is to go into the show notes of this podcast or the description if you're on YouTube. Click on the link to patreon.com/LukeBraunNFL. Join me if you like. But if not, I would love for you to just go watch the history documentary. Part 1 is out. I am so excited about it. It covers the origin of the Vikings. It goes all the way up until Bud Grant gets there. So it's the Norm Van Brocklin years. I paid somebody to animate Norm Van Brocklin yelling at a ref. So just go for that if you want. But you can also learn about Jim Marshall and Carl Eller and Fran Tarkenton and Bill Brown and all those old Vikings, and it's all sorts of great 60s nostalgia. I would love for you to go check that out. Also, the Minnesota football party should be coming out soon, probably later today. That is an ensemble podcast with me and Sam Ekstrom, who started this show, and Luke Inman and Arif Hassan. It should be a really good time. We're going to be doing that twice a week all the way through the season, so go subscribe to that as well on the Locked On Minnesota Sports podcast feed. So, what did we learn about from flag bow? We'll go into another concept in a sec, but what did we learn about flag bow? We learned about the spatial way that plays can manipulate space, right? You got two guys on the sideline. Do you have two defenders on the sideline? If you have two defenders on the sidelines, you might have one hook curl defender in the middle. If it's something like a cover 4, you'll have a hook curl defender in the middle, and now that person's in conflict with bow, with the hook and the basic or the dig behind it. So we learned about the spatial, right? But we also learned about the temporal part, where you have somebody going out and he is a check down early if pressure happens. And then if the blocking is good, he has time to develop a longer route. And then the corner route also probably has time to develop on the sideline too. So we kind of learned how plays are designed to have solutions for problems, both spatially and with like time. Here's another one like that. It's called Spear Swirl. There was an awesome throw to Justin Jefferson from Kirk Cousins on Sunday that everybody got a huge thing. It was a big highlight catch. You can probably find it on Twitter if you go just look it up. But Spear is super simple. It's a particular route. Sometimes I will call this a deep over, but I'm going to try to use more Mcvay terminology as we go on. So I'm going to start trying to call that Spear. But it's just a big, like often Justin Jefferson, but it's a big shot play. It was Stephon Diggs before, it was Adam Thielen before too. It still might be Adam Thielen, could be KJ Osborne, it could be a lot of guys, but it's a big shot route. So you start on one end of the field, and it's not like a deep post, but it's close to that, where you just sort of aim yourself at the opposite corner and you run. This one's got a little bit more specificity to it, where you run the play art that I saw that I will probably have up on the screen right now is you run 18 yards and then you break to daylight. So it's like you run a specific number of yards and then you break to daylight. So it's not like a post like you would see in Madden, where you run straight to a certain yard line and then you break at a 45-degree angle. It's more you run at an aiming point, and it's probably not straight. You run it like a hash or something to a certain point, and then you just break to wherever guys aren't. And then the quarterback has to also anticipate where guys aren't and where you're going to run, and then he's going to throw it. Very cool to see Kirk Cousins and Justin Jefferson on that same page by like day 3, by the way. That rules. You should be very excited about that. So usually you'll stick some kind of check down on that side, because that spear is going to clear a lot of guys out. You're not going to have somebody chilling in the flat while somebody runs by them for a spear, and it's one big long route. You usually is going to be alone. There's not going to be another receiver over there, so there's probably only one defender, and if that guy is running with Justin Jefferson, it'll be wide open over there, so have the running back leak out over there to be the check down, and maybe he can get 10 yards if you get in trouble. And if there are multiple defenders over there, then the spear is going to be a really good option because there's not as many people deep. So spear pairs with swirl. The namesake of spear is a corner route. And then at the end of the corner route, you turn around, you work back toward the ball. So it's a little bit like a comeback, but it just breaks outside instead of inside. And it has one extra move in it. So you're really trying to sell a corner route with swirl. You want them to play it over the top like it's a corner. If you're a cornerback guarding a corner route, that's great. then you're trying to stay over the top of it so that you can work back to the ball if they try to throw it. And that back shoulder throw is a lot harder. So if you can help it, you want the quarterback to have to be throwing that back shoulder instead of just being able to throw one right in the breadbasket like they practice 10 million times. So if they're going to try to make you play that back shoulder, you can turn around, work back toward the ball, and should be free real estate. So it kind of spirals, by the way. Like if you think about it, like a corner, and then they turn around, and it kind of makes a little swirl. You get it, swirl, and the spear kind of spear. It's like it kind of looks like a spear. I don't know. So it's a shot play. You have two deep routes, and the idea of these two working in tandem is there's a couple things. A, it sort of requires you to flood the coverage to one side, and if you're flooding the coverage to one side, then Dalvin Cook might be in space with one man to beat, and it's an explosive play. You love that opportunity. And that's the check down. Like that's the fallback safe option. The real option is that these are all shot plays. This is an attempt to get a deep completion. And in the training camp version of it, I don't remember what they were playing on defense, but in the highlight we saw, that was Justin Jefferson deep down the field. Kirk Cousins lays it beautifully between two defenders, and it's a huge, huge, huge play. Let's see more of that, please, from you two. And then the thing you might notice about this play is that I have only said 3 routes because you'll have a lot more blockers. This is something you can call with 8 in protection and only 3 people running out for a route, and it should still have a pretty decent shot of getting you a one-on-one, or at least a good opportunity to get a big one. This is a great 3rd and long play because you can help guard against their blitz, and if they blitz, you can still punish it if you pick up the blitz with all your extra protection men. The Vikings version of this was a little bit more of an aggressive one. That seems like it's built more for, built a little bit less for like 2 tight end personnel, or for like Shanahan will run this with Kyle Juszczyk blocking on the field. This could be run with many wide receivers, and they actually put a go route also on the other sideline. So instead of somebody blocking, you've got like a check down and a go route down one side, and then you have the deep over coming over to the other side where there's already a swirl. So that's a lot of stuff to cover, and you still have an extra blocker. So it's still a fairly safe play, but a little bit more of an aggressive version of it. Those are the kinds of variants that you'll see. And those variants, that's how plays vary. That's in every playbook. There's a version where we've got an extra receiver, a version where we don't, a version where we put a go route in it, a version where we keep an extra blocker in, and you can kind of switch between one or the other depending on how the protection's going that day. And those are the sorts of, call them halftime adjustments that you have in your pocket that you should be able to come in with in the game. So again, what did we learn here? That the two sides of a play can sort of work in tandem with each other. The spear is going to take safeties really deep, and it's going to force corners to be one-on-one against a swirl, which is a really hard route to guard one-on-one. So they are kind of working in tandem with each other. The swirl is useless if that guy is bracketed. So if you want to stop Justin Jefferson from getting bracketed, let's say they're double covering and they're keeping a safety over the top of him all the time, then have Amir Smith-Marset run the spear, right? He's fast enough that he can get down there. That's going to take the safety away. And because he's coming from the other side, they probably haven't accounted for that. So now you've got a corner one-on-one with Justin Jefferson, and you made it. That's the point of these plays. They are not all, this is how we touch down. They're plays that are meant to counter certain tricks that a defense will use to attack them in certain ways, to exploit one weakness, and then you need another play that exploits another weakness the next week. Get it? Let's go into some of the other camp notes. I'll give you some position battle updates, but obviously we're going to talk about this a lot over the whole week. So don't worry if I miss anything, I'll catch up. But first, let me talk to you about banking. Dave is an app that can help you if you are in some trouble. Look, we've all been there, man. You get your car declined and you need lunch, or you need to get someone a birthday gift, or just a few gallons of gas in your car. Dave can help you with that my paycheck is coming tomorrow and I'm totally screwed situation. It can get you up to $500 instantly with extra cash. Just download Dave. No interest, no credit check needed. You can pay it right back the next day. Tackle those expenses that have been stressing you out. So if you're in a pinch and you need some extra help, download Dave and think of it as a helping hand from future you. That's DAVE. Sign up for an extra cash account and get up to $500 instantly. For terms and conditions, go to dave.com/legal. Instant transfer fees apply. Banking provided by Evolve. Member FDIC. So, look, the headline of camp is that the guy who worked for Sean McVay and people on the same coaching tree as Sean McVay is using the same concepts as Sean McVay. Who'da thunk it? Sorry, Kevin O'Connell, your secret's out. But let's examine some of the more granular stuff. And I think first I just need to point out everybody is raving about how Kirk Cousins looks in this camp. Now, that happens. He's always a great camp guy, right? Great. He's studious. There's no pressure in camp. You're not doing as much situational stuff, so it can kind of get overshadowed by the non-situational drills. And so camp will highlight Kirk's strengths. That said, even after adjusting for that, Kirk looks great, man. Like, he is dealing. He is throwing darts out there. He and Justin Jefferson seem to be on a hell of a good wavelength together. Many people have, like, in separate instances raved about how well he has a grasp of the new playbook. Something Kirk Cousins has a lot of experience doing, and he's like Annie Edison. So yeah, that doesn't surprise me, but it's cool to see. Kirk looks sharp. There you go. Headline for you. Jordan Hicks is back. He was out with a non-COVID illness for a couple days. He's back. That's great to see. He's getting first-team reps. By the way, in his stead, Troy Dye got the first-team reps. So that's the third guy on the depth chart right now. He might keep that. Dye was always somebody I thought he's along a developmental arc, and he's been very bad, but it seemed like he was at least progressing on that developmental arc. Not in a way that makes his play better, but in a way that, like, the mistakes he's making become more and more fixable until you run out of mistakes to fix, and now he's better. But now Jordan Hicks and Eric Kendricks are the primary two linebackers. Jesse Davis has been in and out. He has a brace on his knee. Kevin O'Connell basically said that was a load management thing for him to sit out for a day. It wasn't like that, but I don't know. This is also a time of year where he can just lie. It's like totally not against the rules to just, like, not say the truth. So I don't know if he would do that, but that he would have a reason to, right? If he wanted to keep opponents off the scent. In his stead, it was Chris Reed taking first team reps, and Ed Ingram got some, but he also got second team reps, and then he also got some first team reps. So that might partially be competition. That might partially just be, opportunity. Kevin O'Connell's line on this has been, everybody's on, like, an individual plan. Like, everybody's on a path that has been designed for them. So that's probably just part of their developmental thing with Ed Ingram. There is some backup quarterback drama, I guess. Mannion and Mond have basically been splitting reps. You'll have a Mannion day who Mannion's got the twos today, and Mond's got the twos the next day, and then some days they'll flip back and forth. But they're very clearly in, like, a true blue competition here. Haven't seen personally a lot of clips of one or the other yet. I plan to watch them very studiously if they're still in a competition by the time I get there. But secondhand from, like, Will Raggets or Arif Hassan, everybody says that Mannion is outplaying Mond so far, and he's probably leading for the job, but we have not seen that reflected in snap counts yet, so a lot of game left to be played. And then I guess one more thing, that's a few things, the defensive backs, let's talk about them real quick. In particular, Andrew Booth, Lewis Seen, Cam Bynum, and Cameron Dantzler. These are the four that we're watching really close. These are the camp battles for actual jobs, and they have all had their ups, and they've all had their downs. Cam Bynum gave up a really bad touchdown on Sunday, and then he got an interception later. Lewis Seen has made some awesome plays, and he's had some awesome plays made on him. Same of both Booth and Dantzler. It's hard for me to get a holistic sense, but my sense right now is that Booth has done better against the twos than Dantzler has done against the ones, but not by enough of a degree to overcome the adjustment you should probably make because Booth's going up against Amir Smith-Marset and Cameron Dantzler's going up against Justin Jefferson. And then on the other side, it seems like Lewis Seen is still developing a little bit. He's still getting his feet under him. He's a smart kid. He's working his ass off, and the coaches are very happy with where he's at. But I think the role that they're teaching him is going to take a little bit. So that might not be something that is even ready by week one, or it could be ready by the first preseason game or something. But right now, Cam Bynum is definitely the better choice, but I don't think he will be long-term, and I don't think it'll be that way by the end of the season or anything like that. It's just a matter not of if, but when with Seen. That's the vibe that I'm getting. But I'm saying that about 60% certainty. So there's a lot of camp left to be covered. Tomorrow, send me your questions at Luke Brown NFL or at Locked On Vikings, or send an email to lockedonvikingspodcast@gmail.com, or fill out the Google form in the show notes. I will answer your questions on the show as it is Twitter Tuesday. This is the tradition. I'll see y'all then. And as always, Skol.